Hello.
Hello.
Um, yeah, welcome to the True Creators podcast. I'm here today with Jill Badonsky. Um, so I actually started my journey in creativity coaching with Jill, starting about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. And yeah, welcome to the show, Jill.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So as a little brief introduction, and you can elaborate on these things because I know that you do all sorts of things, but I know you as someone who is an author. You've written a couple of books on creativity. I think there's another one in the works. Is that right?
Yeah, I have three and two more on the way, actually.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Great. Yeah. So one's behind. I can see it on your shelf. I also have it here. So the muse
Yeah.
is in an owner's manual to your creativity, and then the nine modern day muses.
And the almanac, a daily dose of wonder. Gonna have to get that to you. You would
Oh,
like that.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. Um, and so broadly, it seems like all of your work that I'm aware of really focuses on the human capacity for creativity and how to use that, how to bring it
Mhm.
into your life. Um, and then there's also the coaching program that you developed, and we can talk a bit about that as we go on. But yeah, just wonderfully transformational for me in my experience, and really marked a change from where I was and how I was approaching life to how I began to approach life that has just continued to enrich my experience so much. So thank you so much for that. And anyone who's listening just at the beginning, know that it's a wonderful program that you might be interested in checking out.
What,
To-
can I ask you a question?
of course, yeah.
Yeah, what was it that was transformational for you? I always like to know what that is. What,
Yeah, I think the simplicity of returning to kind of that question of what do I want to create? I mean, that is very poignant. And then Kaizen, which means sort of continuous progress through small steps. But the way that we learned Kaizen through your program of really going so small and allowing the smallest to be enough, I think that was that was quite radical for me. And I think for a lot of people that go through it, have that similar experience that actually saying, oh, that's enough. And that momentum can start from there. Um, it's sort of what everything else snowballs from, and allows you to really be on your own side when you're not fighting yourself and feeling like you're always kind of underdoing it or not doing enough. You know, it's quite a different paradigm to start saying, "Oh, that's enough," and even a thought. You know, that's what one of the wonderful things just to say, "Oh, that thought I had towards my creative project." That's kind of working on it, you know, and just kind of shifting the frame in that way was really powerful.
Yeah, well put. Well put. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd kind of like to begin by hearing a little bit about where you began creatively as as a child, um, and what your life was like when you were growing up, as far as how you created, what kind of things you created. I would imagine you had a vivid imagination. The art that you produce now, there's a lot of childlikeness in your art, and the way of seeing the world is, it's very beautiful and kind of whimsical and playful. Um, but yeah, any way that you'd like to sort of begin at that point, it'd be great to hear how creativity showed up for you when you were younger.
Good question. It's always been a big part of my life, and you're right. I had a really vivid imagination, and I had a really imaginative mother, so I inherited her imagination. And at the same time, she was not really into being a mother. So I got to use my imagination a lot on my own because there was not really adult figures there supervising me. So I invented worlds, and I herded cats, and I saved planets from destruction. And my mom was an incredible artist, and she would take me on her outings with her. And she would paint these incredible sailboats, and I would be on her side with my crayons and making sailboats. And she would correct my drawings because she was an incredible perfectionist, and my stuff was wobbly. So I got the impression I'm not an artist. My stuff needs to be fixed. But it was still such a coping mechanism for me to escape into this world of art, because the outer world kind of didn't meet my satisfaction or didn't meet my needs. And this world of creativity you're in charge of. And when reality is just, you can't really erase reality or redo it, but you can in art. And so I did a lot of art. I was sort of like a workshop leader when I was 16. I invited my girlfriends over, and they had to make collages before they could have the pizza. So I just had this instinctual, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do something creative. And then in high school, I just started writing these notes and illustrating them. So I write and illustrate my books. So that's where I got my start, or just to entertain my girlfriends, just like multiple
Mm.
choice pictures. And I think my main goal was to make people laugh. That was my role in my family, and I just got a lot of satisfaction. You never know where things come from. Is it in your DNA? Is it something you're doing because you need to, or is it all of those things? But I just needed to make people laugh, I guess, because I had a really dark childhood. So I guess, my coping was whimsy and laughter and
Mm.
stuff like that. So um, that's where I got my start. I didn't have the confidence at all, and I wanted to go into something creative, but my parents were like, you need to type, you need to learn to type, which I'm really glad I did. And then I went into occupational therapy and psychiatry, which was helping kids through the creative process get self-esteem and stuff like that. And so it was kind of like what Julian Cameron calls a shadow artist. It's let me help you be creative because I'm not worthwhile, or I couldn't possibly do it. So let me help you do what I would like to do. And just a real instinct to help people at the same time. And through creativity, it was like, that was, I couldn't think of a better thing I wanted to do was help people using art and writing and those kinds of things. So that just led to
Got you.
other things. Yeah.
Nice. So the picture I have there as well of of you creating notes with little quizzes on them, um is that they're sort of, they are creations. They're kind of framed by a little piece of paper, however big it is, and it has an idea that you've created on the page, and then it's something that you can give out. And
Mhm.
I think this is also a really, tends to be a key point with these conversations that I'm having, that people who end up having really kind of living and breathing creativity in their later life, have these repetitions of lots and lots and lots of little creations, even if they're small little quirky things. They've gone through the whole creative process. So it's kind of like, oh, you had an idea, it sounds like, and then suddenly you create it, and then you can give it to a friend and you get the laugh, and you kind of go through that whole cycle of, you have the idea and then you create it, and then you're the audience to it, and it's done and it's out in the world and it does something, and then you move on and you do another thing. um I think there's just
I
such
like
a,
your observation about the repetition. I never thought of it that way, but just the instinct. the desire to doodle or to write, and continuing to do that over and over again is what, you never know where it's going to go. And you just go with what you want to do in the moment and follow where it goes and not try to control it. But I think that repetition is really important, because that's what helps to find your own voice. It's like, ooh, I liked how that came out. I liked making my friends laugh. Let me do it some more, and finding other ways to do that. So that's a good way to frame it, for sure.
Nice. So then you were in occupational therapy,
Mhm.
and having been on the inside, I kind of know where this story ends up. But it'd be really good to kind of hear from your side how that arc went, kind of in the professional world when you were kind of working as a shadow artist, as you describe, until, where we'll get to later on where you end up. But what was that experience like, kind of working in the professional world, and how it went?
Well, I assume a lot of creative people are listening to this and may kind of identify with how hard it is to work for other people, because you have your own idea, you want to create your own thing, and creative people, as you know, do not like to be told what to do. We have an idea of our own, and we also, might have a better idea than those above us. And so it's sort of torture being supervised by people who may not, that's sort of subjective, not have a better idea than you have. So I loved working with the psychiatrists, and interpreting people's drawings and art and stuff like that. That was fascinating to me. I loved seeing people evolve from being, really low self-esteem or poor impulse control, to be able to focus through art. But I didn't like working for other people. I liked having my own schedule. And as you know, I took my creativity and used it to help corporations. So eventually I got promoted and started to run hospital units of my own, and became really successful because I was packaging coloring books for kids to help them get through hospitalizations and for adolescents. But after a while, I felt like I was using my creativity for money making that I didn't necessarily agree with, and really burnt out on that. But at the same time, was really grateful I had the experience of, number one, getting the confidence to do that, doing it, being successful, and also at burning out. I'm glad I had the experience of what it's like to burn out and just lose yourself in a job you're not supposed to be in, at least for that amount of time, and just then have to reinvent yourself, which is what I had to do. I just was so burnt out I couldn't do it anymore and had to find another way. And just was obsessed with the creative process. So it became teaching workshops and writing a book, and, and that kind of thing. I could just keep talking.
Yeah.
When
No,
I'll
that's
let you
great.
ask some questions.
So, and when you'd already mentioned that you'd done your pizza party workshops that involved things like that, and then professionally bringing children with low self-esteem through art therapy, and I guess there was a lot of facilitation going on there. Was the decision to write a book the I guess the most ambitious solo project of yours at that point?
Yeah, I think it was. I just had, I don't know where it came from, but I had a compulsion to write a book. And I loved writing so much that I felt like that's where I needed to focus my creative talents. And I felt like I had so much to say in terms of creativity and how, because my experience was in psychology and in occupational therapy. But I think the best experience came from my own creative blocks and figuring out how to get through them. I mean, I had most of them. Procrastination and resistance and low self-confidence and being overwhelmed and comparing myself. And it was wanting to solve this puzzle of how do you write a book when you want to write a book so badly, and all of these things are getting in the way. And that's when I went to life coaching, and that blocked me even more. So
Yeah, what happened in life coaching that didn't work for the creative process and your creative process in that way?
yeah, and I first want to just preface this by saying this is not all life coaches. I know a lot of life coaches that aren't like this, but I went to this life coach and I said, I'm not writing my book. I want to write my book. And she put me on a linear course. And she told me what to do, just going back to, we do not like to be told what to do. And she wasn't an author, so she just kind of like did life coaching. Well, you want to write a chapter by next week. And overwhelmed me with this whole list of do this, what are your contacts, write all of these things down. So I went away from there just overwhelmed. Kind of like I wanted to please her. So trying to write a chapter in the book and just feeling really resentful and rebellious that somebody told me what to do. So I went back and told her what she needed to tell me what to do. I have me pick out like 3 things that I want to do on this book. And so I started to wonder how many people are being blocked by life coaches. And that just motivated me to put something together, which is how, and the whole overwhelm thing really influenced the coaching method with what you're talking about is these unrealistic expectations we have, write
Yeah.
a chapter, contact this, do this, do this. It's just, then we just spin out and not do anything, other than, now there's the internet and Netflix, and those things are so much easier than
So much.
coming up against all of your demons. Not only do you not know where to start and you're overwhelmed, it's you have all these, am I good enough? Is anybody going to read this? Who am I to think I'm going to do this? And so all of our demons need to be, number one, just acknowledge that they're normal.
Hmm.
I needed somebody to say it's normal for you to be procrastinating. That's what happens when we try to write a book. It is a tiny step, and as you know, these steps can be just thinking about it. That is the creative process. Or just sitting down and writing crap and just write blah, 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 creativity and see just getting in motion. And that's why experience during the sessions is so important. So a lot of the tools I came up with were in direct response to my bad experience with life coaching, especially the non-linear part, because creativity, you don't go from,
Yes.
okay, write a chapter, write the next chapter, do this. It's like have an idea, go to Chicago, um, bake something. Oh, here's another idea. Maybe write that down, go back to the other. So it's just trying to put somebody on a linear course just doesn't respect how creativity works. How, sometimes it takes longer, sometimes you need to incubate, um, sometimes you need to take a break. So all of those things are what work in the creative process, and people need to know about them. And it's, one of the biggest things that I've incorporated since you've been in there is one of the biggest creative blocks is people not knowing these things,
Hmm.
not knowing that
Hmm.
there's something such as creative chaos, not knowing that they're not alone, not knowing that it's okay to break things down to 30 seconds. And that actually breaks resistance. And then, as you said, the momentum is there. But to get to that 30 seconds, we have to go just anything, just small and crappy, do it for 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden, oh, this is working. Why did I wait so long? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does
So a number
that
of
answer
these
the
things that
question?
you're mentioning Yeah. Take a break. So in the book, which I guess is your first book, The Nine Modern Day Muses, and a bodyguard, so 10 guides to creative inspiration. And the idea behind this book is you kind of you bring to life the Greek muses once more, but through a creative lens. And so taking a break is lull, the muse lull, and to recognize, hey, at times you need to take a break, and you personify it and make it really playful. And so I'm hearing that in this story, you see the life coach, you're trying to write your book. So I guess you had the idea for it already. Was it under that type? Was that idea already in place from the beginning as nine muses?
No, I didn't know there was actually nine muses in Greek mythology. My book started out as cures for depression.
Okay, okay.
um,
Yeah, brilliant.
yeah,
So a great
yeah. So
example of
it's
that
like
non-linear. You
I
wanted to write a book,
experienced
but you
it.
didn't
I
know
worked
what
with
book you were
it.
going to write.
Yeah, and I started out with like 50 muses or something, and then I found oh, there's nine Greek muses. So I fit all of my 50, or some of them got fired, into the nine modern day muses, and I couldn't quite get them all into nine, so that's why there's a bodyguard in there, and that just kind of cracked me up that there was nine muses and a bodyguard
Yeah, yeah.
to help you protect your creative. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I
So
also really
yeah, when go ahead.
what I also really like in the story is that from the burnout, there's something about kind of alignment with your creative spirit and this rebellious nature that really wants to stand in its own truth, that's unique in the way that it is. And here we are, we have one life, and as as great as it can be to learn and cooperate and be parts of other people's projects and the wider society and these kind of things, there's that creative spirit that really wants to express itself in and make its unique sort of thumbprint on the world in some way, whatever at whatever scale that may be. And that when we resist that and ignore it, then it can lead to burnout. It can really have this physical effect on us when we're not honoring it. Um, and then as you started to listen to it, it started to transform your life. And that those ideas, we start off with, cures to depression and end up with a totally different book. And yet it's a book. There's some continuity there between you having this vision of something you would like to bring to the world, and then this amazing nonlinear journey and evolution of what that can look like, and the support you recruited that kind of went wrong, but was also the focus of of your creativity that then started to spawn this coaching program. And so there's just so many things that can come out of starting to listen to our creative spirit and not really knowing where it's going to end up, but knowing that there's some signal there for us. So,
The cool part
yeah.
of it is creativity comes from such a subconscious place. You can, like, I'm starting to write this book on depression and not realizing I need this because I'm not being creative. So not being creative can lead to depression if you're a creative person. You're, like you said, you're holding something back. And and I really think when you do that, and I know a lot of creative people experience this, when you're working for another person or when somebody tries to hold you back from your creativity, there's a lot of anger there. And there's a lot of fuck them. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to invent my own career here. And then parents going, what are you doing? You can't do that. And going, yes, I can. You can't write a book. Yes, I can. And I think using that anger to mobilize our creativity is a much better way to use it than to suppress it and have it depress us. So, and I just feel that's important to say, because I know there's a lot of people who are, kind of being repressed by other people, and to start kind of finding outroads to and using
Mm.
the frustration and the rebellion to do that. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do this and use my own voice and go in this direction. And like you said, also get support for it. That's a big part of succeeding at something too. So just thought I'd
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah. And actually, to sort of underline that point further, going back to your original question of what had such a strong impact on me, um, doing your program when I did, that rebellious piece was so huge for me. And I actually remember the first email that I wrote you, and I said, "Oh, I don't really know if I'm creative," and I'd sent you a poem that I'd done. Does this count, kind of thing? And it's so funny how we can look back at where we were and how much our perspective can change. But those two things, just to own the fact that I was creative and that I had this sort of unique form of expression that I had cultivated, but I never really appreciated quite as part of my fabric of being a human, that actually I was a creative being and I was doing it in these little ways. Um, and there's just so many formulas out there in the world, blueprints to how to live and, do this and do it like this. And so to get permission and to be acknowledged as one, as a creative, and then if you are creative, then you're probably rebellious too, and that all of those things are okay, and to be able to start working with those attributes, I mean, it can just open up so much of an unknown future that you can develop along the way. And really, as you describe it, it's like you created a career, you, without a sense of exactly what it would look like, but you created it. And I think that that's, especially in this day and age, so many people are looking for that, because we probably sense more than ever, I imagine much more than when you began your journey of career building, which, but now it's sort of all around us. And yet
Mhm.
we see it on Instagram, or we see it, all these people living quite fascinating, unique lives in some ways, all of this freedom and opportunity. And yet, when we're not in relationship with our creative spirit and the creative process, it can just be like, well, how do they do that? How do people, how do you create a life? And I think it all comes back to so many of the tools that you talk about in your work. Um, yeah, like, harnessing that anger, directing that frustration, starting small, being scrappy about it, and lowering expectations. I think that's another huge one. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear you speak to how you think of lowering expectations and how important that is in the creative process.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest blocks is people's expectation of themselves, and it's now more than ever because people can see everything that's out there. Like you said, they're looking at other people and going, how can they do that? I can't do that. So it's takes a little convincing sometimes, because people are like, they hear the messages, be all that you can be, to be your best self now, which end up really putting people into a block, because they they're it's a delusion to think that if you've never drawn before, and I hear this from so many people, I can't draw. You don't say, I can't play the guitar, because you need to take lessons to play the guitar, right? It's just such a vulnerable thing that we have to be given permission to go just do anything. And so many breakthroughs come from, let's write right now, but write something really crappy. And so people aren't paralyzed by this expectation that whatever they put down, whatever they draw, whatever they write, needs to be something that's going to change the world, or that people are going to admire, that they're going to get 3,000 likes immediately on. And I forget who said it, but it's the mistakes that we make that make us unique. It's It's these
Mm.
accidents that you go, oh, that was interesting. And that's what happened to me. I did this artwork, then I go, this is crap because my mother used to fix it. But I just kept doing it. And then a publisher said, I want to publish your book based on your art. And I was like, are you sure it was me? I do this really, loose and goofy stuff that I've been doing for years and years and years. So it's developed its own style of its own, but I had no expectations because at an early age, I just figured this is just for fun. And I think that's the thing too, is we ask that in our coaching, how can you make this fun? Because fun and high expectations usually aren't able to occupy the same space. This is, let's just have fun and see what accidents happen, see what, and if nothing happens, that's fine too. So it's back to that permission as well. And we work a lot with the negativity bias, which I think you were captive to when you first wrote me. It's like our first instinct is, I'm not good, because we needed to survive by going, what is wrong with the environment? What is wrong with me? So I can survive here. And that's still around, but not as useful anymore. And so we write a poem and we go, this can't be good, because that's our default mode. So to be able to share it, and sometimes you have to share it with the right person, or you have to ask yourself, do I like this? It's like that quote that you like so much from George O'Keeffe, that I've already decided it for myself. So both praise and criticism go down the same drain. And that's not an easy thing, to read something and to not be influenced by, I wonder if other people are going to like this, and go, I like this, and that's enough. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, one of the most powerful things is, if it doesn't go anywhere, you still like it. But you're not so unique that if you like it, there's not going to be a whole bunch of people that like it too. And that's how I got through writing my first book, is, it was these whimsical muses. And my negativity bias was going, this is so silly. Nobody's going to like this. And I just kept saying to myself, just write it for yourself. Just entertain yourself with what you're doing and see where that goes. And it worked really well. So that's what I wish for people, is just, do I like this? And the scary thing about social media is, you can put something out there and your audience isn't there. Your
Yeah.
audience isn't watching, so you don't get the likes. But somebody else can put the exact same thing or something similar out and get 3 million likes. So we can't use social media likes as a barometer until we find our audience. And you can't go, okay, I got to change this because I didn't get any likes. No, I liked it the way it is. I don't care. And
Yeah.
trust that it will get to people, or that you'll have enough self-respect just to keep evolving to where you need to be. And have,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point as well. That sometimes there is a gap where our ambition surpasses our current abilities, and so we don't like what we're able to create. But if we keep creating, then we can start to get closer to what we imagine. And there are so many rewards along the way through creating. And so I think that's an interesting point as well, that
well,
it's like, it's okay not to like your stuff on the
I
way
know
towards liking your stuff.
sometimes we're not our own audience. One of my favorite stories is making art with this guy who liked all of his stuff and framed it with glass and black electricals tape and hung it in cafes. And I hated all of my stuff and put it in a folder and ripped it up to make collages or paint it on the other side. And he one time took one of my pictures that wasn't even finished and framed it without telling me and put it in a cafe. And I went in and saw it and just freaked out. And somebody bought it for $350. And I thought, I'm not even my own audience here. But then I asked her, what did you like about this? And she was like, I like the unfinished look. I like just the looseness of it. And when I looked through her eyes, I was like, yeah, I was trying to be like my mother. I was trying to be like somebody else. And I didn't see that this looseness, this unfinished look, was something that appealed to people. So, I think there's the benefit of listening to somebody go, that was an incredible poem, even if you didn't like it, and go, let me look through their eyes and see this, because there is an
Yeah.
audience for this. Yeah.
Yeah. What an amazing story that is. It's such a
The
moment of
cellular
serendipity for,
change. Yeah.
yeah, cellular change. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So there's also a wonderful story of how once you wrote your book. Oh, actually, I'll also just sort of highlight something that I'm seeing, that even at the time where you were ripping up your pieces, you were ripping them up and making more art out of it. And so the whole way through, regardless of whether you liked it or other people liked it, you were having fun. That was part of it. But there's also like, you were creating things, you were bringing things to life, and then they got ripped up and they turned into new things. But you're kind of going through this whole cycle again and again and again of creating stuff. And I think that's often another kind of misconception, or people not understanding that good creators, people that sort of are fluent in the creative process, they kind of do it. They do it a lot. And that's how they do it. They do it a lot. It's kind of like
Yes.
they go through that whole thing again and again and again and again. And it's not, the focus is less on the likes or the this, it's on the thing that they want to create. And then once it's created, they sort of do what they want with it. It can be
Yeah.
destroyed or it can be framed, but it was sort of finished as far as they were concerned. And then they start again. And I think that's again quite a different orientation, certainly than people have when they're coming in with a lot of perfectionism. There's a sense that it has to, not only do you have to create it and finish it and do it well, but then it has to go out there and be liked. And it's this whole chain of expectation that ends up being so overwhelming, when just reminding yourself, like, you can break it, you can throw it away, you can do whatever you like with it, but just see what it's like when it's done, and that sort of
Yeah.
echoed in what you said about the book as well. Like, just write the book, bring the book to life, and then see what life it wants to have when it's done.
Then, yeah, then you let it go and see what happens. But I think it's that persistence too. So there's so many talented people that will stop because things didn't come out as they wanted to, and just not stopping and letting things go and then starting a new thing. And it's an adventure, because you have no idea where things are going to take you. And if you're open to it and curious about it, it's just your existence just keeps opening.
The adventure, you never know what's going to happen, and to sort of do it anyway. And that's another lovely line that you have, just like, oh, I'm not good enough, so what, I'm going to do it anyway, and I love that in the act of creation, although there's all of this psychological stuff going on, like, oh, are people going to like it, do I like it, am I good enough, which is all sort of about you and your psychology. All of the tools that you give people, it sort of just says, just start creating. And it's a totally different focus. Like, when you are creating, you're in motion, and suddenly it doesn't have to be about you. And that's the nice thing. Like, it gets to be about this picture. And so much of life is like, oh God, it's all about us. And then when we
Yeah,
create, it gets to be about something else.
that's true. That's true. You get out of your own troubles, and it doesn't even need to be about the picture. It can be about resilience. It could be
Hmm.
about or getting through your fear. I'm afraid to do that. So many people stop themselves from doing things because I'm afraid I'm not going to be good at it. You're not. You're not going to be good at it at first. So do it for the courage that you get for doing something you're not going to be good at, because after a while you will be. The delusion is you're going to be good, but the truth is, if you do it over and over again, you are going to be good. You're going to find your style. You
Mhm.
can't help it. And if you don't, you're going to get confidence, and confidence is passion. Just and that's such a good feeling. But then it just carries over into your other parts of life. I'm going to be courageous with asking this person this. I'm going to be courageous about trying this, and I've never tried that before. And that's the muscle we get by being courageous in the creative process. So it gives us freedom to do it. I mean, imagine, listeners, what you would do if you weren't afraid. That fear is what stops us, and it's a part of the creative process. It's just comes with the creative process. So you have to go, there it is, and so what? I'm going to do it anyway. I'm too old. So what? I'm going to do it anyway. Somebody else is doing it. So what? I'm going to do it too. So it's, yeah, empowering yourself with that kind of rebellious spirit to keep yourself going. It's important.
Yeah. And I also love that that fear, there's lots of fears that we have around how we should be in society. And what I like about this is it's really the fear of being true to ourselves that we get to work with in the creative process, and that there's that desire. It's like it's from you. It's not something you have to be doing or are supposed to be doing or should be doing.
Mhm.
It's something that you've decided you want to do. And
Mhm.
once you start working that muscle, that again opens up life in a different way, and you're in a different relationship with life, where it really is the question of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to
Yeah.
create? And I am scared of that. And I have this whole track record of being able to do stuff that I'm scared about. So, oh well.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, and that's what we do in Kaizen-Muse too, is go, I was scared before. How did I get through it before? I just kept going, and just empowering yourself with your own successes from your past. We get overwhelmed. We probably have been overwhelmed before, and we got through it. You
Yes.
will get through this. It just doesn't feel like it in the moment sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear the story about you finished your book, because I read it on your newsletter fairly recently. And it's just
Mhm.
such a great story as to, again, how little we know, and that trying to predict how things are going to go or listening to people can often, well, just thwart our creative process, and also thwart the possibilities that are actually out there, because they're maybe not infinite, but close to, so there's so many different ways. So I'd love for you to tell the audience of what happened once your book was written, and how, the journey of getting it out there in the way that you were able to in the end.
Yeah, so I wrote it, and people seemed to like it, but I still didn't have the confidence that a publisher would want it. So I hired another coach, a book coach, and I showed it to her because I self-published it, or it wasn't even self-published; it was printed. I just went to the printer, and it was bound together. And she said, "Well, the name, the 9 modern-day muses and a bodyguard, no publisher is going to really want that. That doesn't really tell what the book is about. You need to put 10 creative principles." And she went through, and it has all these funny fonts in it and illustrations. This isn't really the format that people are going to be looking at, um, giving you a chance. So you need to change the format, and Times New Roman, double space. So I went away from that. My little child spirit inside just went, forget that. If I have to change this, change the title, change the way it looks, I'm just going to do it myself. Um, but I sent it out, and Penguin Putnam said, "What fonts are these? We want the book just the way it is. We're not going to make hardly any changes. We want the fonts, we want the illustrations." So if I had listened to this person, I would have lost out on that publishing opportunity. And so it really goes back to, thank goodness I listened to the intuition that, like, this is, there was part of me that was like, she's an authority here. And I think that's what people do, is they must know, so I better do it that way. And then they lose out on the distinction of,
Mm.
I'm submitting this to a publisher in the wrong format. And the publisher likes it because it's so distinctive. It doesn't look like anybody else's. And I think that's what Steve Martin said that one time, is make it so good they can't ignore you. or make it so different that
Hmm.
it can't be ignored. So, yeah, I like that story too.
Yeah. And so what happened next? I actually don't know this part of the story. So I don't know if at this point were you already starting to coach people or teach people how to coach in the sort of Kaizen-Muse fashion. Um, when did that come?
Yeah, I was teaching workshops and somebody asked me to coach them creatively in exchange for a massage. So it's like, I don't know what the hell that is, but I wanted a massage. And so she gave me a massage. She wanted to write a book. So then I sat down with her and yeah, it was, I think they both kind of happened at the same time. So he started to coach her and it just seemed like I knew what to say intuitively. Because a lot of the coaching is intuitive. It's like, what would I need if I were her? She's not getting to it. So what I needed was to make it really easy and to break it down. So that experience just lit a fire under me, and I just started telling people I'm a creativity coach. Oh, and this is a good part of it. It was back in the 90s, and I've been doing this for 20 years. Um, since 2004 is when the actual model happened. But I thought people were starting to get certified as life coaches, and I thought, I wonder if you have to be certified to be a coach. I better go get certified as a life coach. So I went to this life coaching school, and same thing happened. It's just like, oh my God, I like my coaching so much better than what this person is teaching. And I just dropped out and said, I just gave me the confidence of this stuff I was doing was working. This is homogenized and general in a template, and it's not me. So I was teaching the 9 modern day Muse workshops, and those people wanted to do some. Yeah, it was really organic. They wanted to have me coach them, so I just started having people over to my little house, and then it just took off from there. And it was like how, and I think people need to know because I'm working with somebody now who's like, I don't have any energy to do my creative stuff because I'm putting it all in this creative job I have. And to know that I went from a corporate job to working in a bookstore, doing graphic arts, teaching yoga, to
Mhm.
support building a business as a workshop leader. It didn't happen overnight. It happened by supporting myself with jobs I could leave behind, and then be able to devote the energy to building something else. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. So really, I mean, no, it sounds like knowing what you wanted while it being completely organic and sort of evolutionary, but doing what you could to support that. And I think again, that's this it's like we don't have to live life that way.
mhm.
But we have the opportunity to if we want. And what kind of better choice than to try and do it our way, you know? And
Yeah,
along the way we can do all sorts of things and jobs that we may not want to do just for themselves, we can do because they support this other thing that we're doing. And I think, especially in an age where everything's sort of appears to be so rapid, that we're able to,
mhm.
just, you know, become a millionaire in 90 days with so and so's formula or whatever it is, to
Yeah.
remind ourselves that, oh, actually, we can be in this for the long haul and we can take our time. That's also another thing that I really, really appreciated, again, around the theme of lowering expectations. But when I did your program, there was one guided visualization that we did, and it was, what if your coaching business didn't need to be running until the next 3 years, something like that. And again, just changing the expectations and the scope and saying like, yeah, that's totally all right. Um, that
Yeah, I
worked.
do that a lot with clients. I go, they have this urgency to get to things, and I go, well, what if you added 6 months to that? And then they relax, and there's not that pressure on yourself, which creates the procrastination and the resistance. It's just like, and sometimes it does get done fast
Yeah.
because you've lowered the expectations, but it doesn't have, and usually in the creative process, things do take longer than you expected. So just knowing that and giving yourself the possibility, I do that all the time with myself too. It's like, I gotta get this book out or somebody else is gonna get it back. No, no, give yourself another year. And then I want to work on it because I don't have this huge amount of pressure putting on
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I also like reflecting on is, so, I did the program with you and then I went through it again. I did the masters, and then I helped facilitate the course, I think, for a couple of years in different periods. And so there was a sort of 3-year window when I was quite involved with
Mhm.
Kaizen-Muse Creativity Coaching. And one of the things I loved was you telling your story about, I want to make a podcast. And it would come up because, you were teaching us about the creative process and it was something that you wanted to create. And here was, from the outside, the creativity master.
Mhm.
And then I think for 3 years you were sort of saying the same thing. And then your podcast was born. And it was just such a lovely, graceful example of the difference of occupying that creative space and being a creator in reality. And you create lots of things and you have an idea and a vision for something that you didn't get to for a number of years. And then you did. And then it was really beautiful and unique. And anyone who's listening, do check out Jill's podcast because it's unlike any other podcast you'll hear. It's just like all of your work that you produce. It's really stands on its own, and it's lovely soundscapes and lots of imagination and short as well. So it really reflects everything that I think the message behind, it can be really, and it's so welcome because you can drop in and listen to it for 5 minutes and just go on this little journey. Um,
Mhm. Thank
so I'd love
you.
to hear about that. And also I'll just say that I think this was the first time that I've heard in your creative journey where you started to experiment with audio stuff. I'm not sure if you'd done things in that realm or with that medium.
Yeah, I did a guided relaxation tape a long time
Oh,
ago.
yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been drawn to sound effects and putting things together in stories. And I used to do storytelling with music behind it. So just the whole mixed media and engineering it myself. But you're right, I talked about it for a very long time before I actually did. I was so wanted to do it. And it was all of the things we're talking about. It was overwhelming. I didn't know where to start. Um, and it was hearing somebody else's podcast, and I don't know if I can think of the name of it. It was a podcast that was designed in the pandemic to put people to sleep. So it was these stories that were just beautiful. Um, and I wish I could think of the name of it, but when I heard hers it be so different from everybody else's, I thought, well, that's what I need to do. I do need to, hopefully mine doesn't put people to sleep, but it started out as these stories, these poems that I already written. And I just put sound effects and music to it. And I think the important part was I did talk about it for a while, but I did also trust that I was going to do it, that sometimes you talk about, that's what happened with my book. I talked about it for a very long time before, you know, I
Yeah.
actually offered it to somebody and they said, oh, I better write this. But it was during the pandemic that I thought, well, this will be a good distraction for people. And people are, I think it was Shakespeare who wrote King Lear during a pandemic. So, that's how I started was I'm going to write something during this pandemic. And then the first episode is like how my mind was just all over the place and couldn't write anything. And it was so much fun to do. It's so much fun to make it because I was cracking myself up with the sound effects and with the story. And it got to the point where I just didn't care if anybody listened to it because I was cracking myself and my now husband up with it. I mean, just to hear him laugh and a couple of my friends. And I think that's actually how the one started that inspired me, was she was just doing it for her friends to help them get to
Yeah.
sleep. So I think that's a good way to frame things. And that's how I started, my newsletters back when I was in high school, is let me just make these people laugh. And then every single job I had, I was the newsletter person, just putting funny stuff in things. So yeah, doing it for other people and not doing it for yourself. Like, this is really fun to
Yeah.
do.
And
But
I
yeah,
love that,
it's called.
again, that sort of lowers the bar. It's like, we can have, especially with these days, the reach that you can have to millions or billions, it's like everyone's available, everyone's a potential audience member, which is pretty overwhelming straight out the
It
gate.
is. It is. Well, it became in the top 5% of podcasts. So it made it, somebody liked it out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, yeah, thanks for asking about that. It's fun.
And yeah, just I think also in my creative journey, I think of like, oh, what do I like creating? And I used to love writing people happy birthday messages with little funny rhymes and things like that. And I think those can offer us a good window into, how do we show up sort of effortlessly? And
Mhm.
and actually there's very little difference often to how we can sort of take that insight and put it in different realms and kind of, I mean, again, this is a big part of Kaizen-Muse Creativity Coaching. It's like, how did it work when you did it? Would that
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
now? Would
Yeah,
that work in
exactly.
this place?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's just so, I really love how it just speaks to the inherent creative nature of the human being, that it's in you and you've done it and you're creative all the time in these different little ways. And what if you just did that over here? Would that work?
Mhm.
And it's question based. And I remember being kind of blown away by just the power of questions. I think perhaps all coaching has that. It was the first one that I'd really experienced, but just such simple questions. And I remember feeling so enchanted. I was like, wow, has anyone ever realized how powerful questions are? It was amazing.
Yeah, especially the creative process, because as we're answering questions, we are formulating solutions and coming up with ideas. So sometimes just having somebody listen, because you're using a different pathway when you're speaking out loud. And when there's somebody who wants to hear it, there is this motivation to share something you might not otherwise share. So so many times I hear now, oh, I just realized something, or oh,
Mm.
this is what I can do. And it's the person who came up with it because we asked those questions. We're not going, here's what I think you should do. We're going,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
what if, yeah.
Which is so stale. It's like, another place where I have to follow someone else's opinion.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you now? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, funny you should ask.
Mhm.
I just, I don't know if you saw, but I just finished these
Oh,
creative thought cards, and they like take a lot of the tools, and I've illustrated them, and they're just, where's one? Oh, here's one. I am my own audience. When I create for myself, I don't worry about pleasing anyone else, and I become freer to make my work authentic. If everyone likes what I do, I haven't gone far enough. When I do something I've done, there's a bunch of people. Oh, if I like something I've done, there's a bunch of people who like it too. They're my audience. I like them. Everyone has an audience. We find them by being true to ourselves. So that,
wonderful.
I have little funny things on them. So that was my latest thing. And I'm
Feel free
working.
to read another one. I really like
Oh,
that. So if there's another
oh,
one you'd like
okay.
to read.
Let me see. Here's this dog with a trumpet on his head.
Yeah.
I, I embrace my uniqueness. With compassion and curiosity, I embrace and honor the very things that make me odd. With my quirky nature, within my quirky nature is my most authentic voice or bark. And this is what makes my creativity unique and the experience of it fun. We all wag our tails differently. So they're
Wonderful.
just little funny things like that.
Yeah, and I mean I think there's something here that's come up a number of times we haven't kind of named directly, but just how much humor there can be in being creative. You know, you talked about like yeah, just cracking yourself up when you were making these podcasts and with the sounds that you were using and you know, and like this wonderful, you know, a dog with a trumpet on its head. What a great,
Yeah.
you know, what a great way to introduce humor and personality and oh, I had a point there. Well, I don't know. I guess there's just that light-hearted, you know, we get to be light-hearted and things get to be fun. I also want to share a little story about um, a workshop, the first workshop that I ran with these tools. And I had someone there who was writing a master's thesis, and they weren't really sure whether they should enroll, but they were writing this thesis, and it was very German university, you know, seemed very academic and had to be very serious. And she was really blocked. And I, from the very beginning, just starting out with these small questions of, oh, how could you make this fun? And her whole approach to writing this thesis changed completely. And she enjoyed it, and it, you know, and she got it written in certainly ways that she wouldn't have done otherwise, because we have a perception of what, you know, how serious we should be. And
Mhm.
one thing I loved about going through all of this work is realizing that disconnect between a serious product or outcome doesn't need to be a serious process. It can be quite a playful process. And yet the result is the caliber of whatever energy you're really bringing to it. But that human spirit that you bring to it can sort of be first, you know, first and foremost. It can be, you know, and it's not always fun. Sometimes it's hard and we're building that resilience muscle and being courageous and learning to, you know, learning to accept where we're not quite there yet. And, you know, and other times it can be fun. And that it's just such a vehicle for so much of the human experience that gets to be for you. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, well done with her. Yeah, I think that's such a great question. Can you make it fun? And a lot of people, I think, need to ask that to them. And how can you make it easier? Because we try to
Yeah.
make things so hard. Simplify it or set it up for yourself beforehand or whatever. Make it easy, make it fun, make it different too. Yeah, make it you.
Yeah. So you've got these cards that you've just finished. Will they
Yeah.
be available? Are they
Yeah,
available currently?
they're on my website right now. I'm trying to get them on Amazon, but there's all sorts of rings you have to jump through for that. But
Okay.
people can get them through my website, Creative Thought Cards. I just the fourth edition of the Nine Modern Day Muses just came out. I kind of updated it and condensed it a little bit. And then my current project is just it's a book called I Make Art So I Don't Die of Reality. And it's just talking about how art saves us from the realities that we have these days. So
Mm,
there's that, and another one called Uber Bliss, finding Uber Bliss, which is mindfulness and creativity, just a little journey. So working on that, and just doing another training in a couple of weeks. So
okay.
it's always comprehensive too. So
Great. I remember my point actually because there was one of the I think it's on your website, but I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's something like humans need to be creative, otherwise we get cranky, or something like
yeah,
that.
mortals need to be creative or we'll get cranky. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. You know, and again, it's just that capturing of the humor and lightening the tone. You know, again, I think it's just so the landscape out there is so kind of dominated by kind of being serious and, like you said, being your best self and becoming all that you can be, and you know, kind of these before and after photos, as though
Yeah,
you were a loser before and now you're this great winner. And I mean, it's so over baked in a way. And that's another
yeah,
thing I learned from um, how you would call yourself a demotivational speaker.
yeah.
And this is a
Yeah, and
theme that's carried.
lower the expectations.
Yeah, yeah.
Some people
Um,
don't get that. They're like, no, I gotta do it the best. Like you will do the best you can. If you lower your expectations, you'll get to it for sure.
yeah. And again, that being the disconnect between lowering the expectations doesn't lower the quality. That's not,
Yeah,
the quality will be as probably as best as it can be. It's a,
for better. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, because you're more relaxed. And yeah. And
Mhm.
we've all had that experience of when we're relaxed and we're around people we love and know and we feel safe around, that we're
Our
funnier.
real self comes out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah. So you have a number of these things. You're running a course. When does the course begin? The coaching training?
August 12th. August
Okay.
12th.
All right. Right around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the audience further about any of the things that you have going on that they might be interested to get involved in, or how to reach you, that kind of thing?
Yeah, my website is The Muse is In, and the training is Kaizen-Muse. And you can check it out. I have lots of Zoom workshops and things online. I have something called Wild Abandon, and that really helps people let go usually in the art world, and just kind of we draw with our eyes closed, with our non-dominant hand, things upside down, things really fast, so you can't be perfect. So I run something called the Underground Highway to Creative Results and do a workshop there once a month. So if anybody's interested in what that's like, you might give it a try. And if it's not your thing, that's fine. But we incorporate all of these tools we've been talking about. So it's a lot of fun for sure. And I'm traveling abroad now. I'm going to be in Italy in October doing art and writing. Um, it's full, but I hope to
Is-
get back and do some more
Yeah. Is that the
international.
second year? It,
I did Greece a
uh-huh.
few years ago. Yeah, so trying to vary the countries a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. How wonderful. Yeah, I really recommend anyone who's listening to check these things out. And I, it is fun. I mean, that's one of the things I'm most grateful for. It just introduced so much fun into my experience, and it was like something that got rediscovered after, many years of being underground. Um,
Mm, I'm so glad. So glad you've come
yeah.
a long way. It's so impressive how far you've come. So well done.
Thank you very much. And thank you for, yeah, just providing such a creative model of your own flavor and your own creative spirit. And I just love how the story that you've told today just paints how it's evolved, and how once you have these tools under your belt, life can really, it can just look quite different when you're living with that creative orientation versus needing to know and needing to be good and needing to look a certain way and it needing to be perfect. And I just think of the difference between how I was living and, how I'm living now. And it's just night and day, and so much more easeful, so much more of an easeful way of being. Um,
Right.
and I really think that there's something quite unique. There's lots of ways of living for sure. And there's lots of, um, I guess, modalities that point us towards living a more expressed version of ourselves. And yet, I think that this piece of creativity where we're really in the creative process, and oh, it's happened again.
Aw,
There we go. Okay.
you're on a
Well, we're in the
roll.
creative process and creating things, and that being this kind of little dojo or something where we are learning all of these other tools that we can apply all across our lives and start creating our lives as the subject matter of our creative, as the subject matter of the creative process. And, it's just a wonderful, picturing you in Greece and now in Italy. And, I mean, just what a beautiful picture to have painted from a burnout, and how it just sounds like there's so much of your spirit that's got to express itself in all of the years since. Um, and it sort of just takes listening to it, and then all of these tools that you've mentioned and more to kind of nurture it and let it
Mhm.
grow strong and funny and all the rest of the things that it can be. So thanks so
Yeah.
much, Jill, for sharing your story.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.